For the past 22 months, there's been a noticeable silence from the One Piece community regarding the genocides in Gaza and in Sudan. Creators who refuse to speak, spewing out statements that Palestine is complicated, or when it comes to genocide, they're just apolitical, or they say One Piece isn't political. I'm here to argue that One Piece is political. It's woke. For the past 22 months, I've been dying to make a video calling out YouTubers who use liberal Zionist talking points. YouTubers who look for nuance, who tell their audience that Palestine is complicated, and when they do make a video on Gaza, their focus isn't on the genocide, it's not on Palestinians, it's on anti-Semitism, and they refuse to cite or even trust Palestinian people, the victims of Zionism, the victims of genocide. A creator called Big Dad motivated me to make this video. Big Dad stood up and called the One Piece community out for their silence and their dismissal to simply speak about genocide. Big Dad knew nothing. He knew Palestine was complicated, but after watching One Piece and tying Oda's portrayal of starvation and genocide, the thought, what would Luffy do, gave him enough courage to speak out. And I get it. A lot of One Piece YouTubers might say, oh, I have a platform, a brand. I'm so scared to talk about Palestine. It's scary to speak about Palestine when you know nothing, but I look at Noah Samson, a dude who learned and pivoted his entire channel to focus on Israel's genocide, placing Palestinians in the center. To speak about Palestine, Sudan, Yemen, the Congo might seem like a risk, but so what? I don't get how people watch these horrors unfold and don't say anything. There's still a deafening silence. A silence from cowardly spectators who shriek when fans point out that One Piece is political. If you're sick and tired of watching One Piece slop made by Tekken 101, Rogers Base, Grand Line Reviews, and the Library of Ohara, consider subscribing. Join my crew. Luffy may have only wanted 10 crewmates, but I want 10,000. Become my nakama. If you have a heart, if you want to be like Luffy, consider donating to the Samir Project. The Samir Project is based in Gaza and has greatly helped Palestinians who Israel is currently starving. Please help out. Let's forget about One Piece for a few minutes. Some people who click on my videos might think I'm not taking the genocide in Gaza and in Sudan seriously by talking about One Piece, and they're right. So let's start in occupied Palestine, in the Gaza Strip. For those who don't know, there's a genocide in Gaza and a military occupation in the West Bank. All of Palestine is occupied and colonized. The genocidal colonial entity responsible, Israel, did not spontaneously start a genocide on October 7th, 2023. It has been 77 years of genocide and an attempt at the complete erasure of the Palestinian people. Palestinian history was made taboo. Speaking about Palestine was taboo. You'd get jumped if you criticized Israel and spoke historical truths. I was jumped in masters and faced off with the liberal Zionists who told me that Palestine is complex, the Nakba is complex, settler colonialism is complex. I want you to understand that firstly, Palestine is not complicated. Liberal Zionists want it to seem complicated to shut people up and deter people from the struggle. As I've explained in my videos on Zionism, Zionism is a colonial fascist movement that began before the Holocaust. It was a movement that was rejected by Palestinians and Jews in Europe because Jewish people in Europe wanted equality in Europe, not an exclusive Jewish ethno-state. As I and Bess D. Marks have stated, the Nakba did not appear out of thin air. It was not spontaneous. It was not a reaction to the Arab liberation armies. Transfer was on the table for 40 years. But it wasn't just a transfer, it was ethnic cleansing. As Nur Masalla shows, the Nakba set up a clear pattern of genocide. Masalla, in vivid and horrifying details, shows historical evidence of massacres and war crimes that continued after 1948, that can be traced from 1948 to 2025. The Palestinian people, the victims of Zionism, have been boxed as either violent Islamic fighters or perfect victims, dehumanized to the extreme. In the face of 77 years of genocide, of brutal apartheid settler colonialism, Palestinians, the victims of Zionism, have every right to dismantle Israel and attain liberation. Israel shouldn't exist, and insha'Allah, we will see its collapse. And yet you have people who are silent, who cower in fear, who only talk about anti-Semitism, when Palestinians are being starved and bombed and massacred to death. And when Palestinians fight back, when they do resist and break out of the box of being perfect victims, they are further dehumanized as mindless, anti-Semitic, Islamic fighters. Fuck off. At this point of the genocide, if you've remained silent, if you've been apathetic, if you're a cowardly spectator who thinks Palestine doesn't affect you, I don't give a shit. But it's annoying when people say One Piece has no direct correlation to real time and previous genocides. It's annoying when people dismiss the politics of One Piece because it's radicalized people. It makes people think about the erasure of history, revolution, oppression, racism, and the police. But I want to make it clear, Palestine, Sudan, the Congo, and Yemen should be the focus. And if you really want to help people who are suffering, please donate. I have the Samir Project linked down below. One Piece is a great way to escape real life, to escape reality, but I'm going to keep reminding you of the people who are being starved by Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Never forget their suffering, and I hope they haunt people who read and watch One Piece. Part 2. Fuck the Marines. After 9/11, American propaganda and copaganda was dialed to the maximum. To secure the homeland, the police, the FBI, and the CIA were ordered to hunt down ticking time bombs. Abroad, the American World Police were prepped to bring American justice. This so-called quest and rampage for justice began with the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq in 2003. Oda's portrayal of the Marines and the CP9 is a direct mirror to American forces of oppression, but also the Israeli genocide forces. Oda might have unintentionally done this, as when the Marines are first introduced, he focuses on their sigil of justice, but this morphed into something darker after 9/11. To rule supreme and maintain an empire, the world government needs forces who are propagandized and loyal to the celestial dragons, or to the naive idea of keeping the peace. To maintain security inside the empire, the celestial dragons unleash CP9 and CP0 on covert assassination missions. The Cypher Pole agencies train children who revere the celestial dragons and give them a license to kill anything that harms or threatens the empire. Rob Lucci is a great illustration of the bloodthirsty side of American and Israeli intelligence. The Marines, on the other hand, are the Empire's world police. They are the ones who are usually sent to suppress rebellions, capture runaway slaves, and genocide an entire people. Both Cypherpole and the Marines follow the world government's logic of justice, and that some people's very existence is a crime. The people of O'Hara and Robin's existence is a crime. Ace's existence is a crime. Being a Bukirian or a Lunarian is a crime. For the most part, all the Marines obey when the final judgment comes. Kuzan takes part in the genocide of O'Hara. Akainu is shown to vibe with the world government's justice, burning an entire ship to ash. Kizaru is put in charge of capturing runaway fishermen slaves. No Marine dares to question the execution of Ace, and rather they justify when they learn Ace has Roger's blood. Not even Garp stood up for Ace.
生まれてくる子に罪はない。ガープ、俺の子を頼んだぜ。
Smoker and Kobe, the more rebellious Marines, continuously see Luffy as a threat that needs to be stopped. Their line of thinking is close to Akainu, who sees Luffy's existence as a crime for being Dragon's son. Fujitora, another rebellious Marine who wants to destroy the system, still obeys orders when he's told to capture ex-sex slaves. One Piece YouTubers and fans buy into American propaganda, thinking there are good Marines and bad Marines. No, all Marines are bastards. Fuck all the Marines. The only good Marine is Jaguar D. Sol, the man who dared to oppose the O'Hara genocide. Sol is better and more humane than the entire IOF, all Israelis, since 1948. Sol looked into Sengoku's soulless pro-genocide eyes and instantly defected. Man fought against his ex-comrades and died, shielding and protecting Robin. This was a Marine who was indoctrinated and still had a soul. I think it's tough for Western readers to think deeply about the role of the Marines in the story, because they reflect all forces of oppression. Marginalized and queer people subjected to police states see the mirror automatically. They've seen the batons, the bombs, and assassinations. They've felt and endured the starvation and the occupation. Western readers try their hardest to deny the role of the Marines because they too desire a status quo. They feed into the propaganda that the police, security intelligence, and the military are just keeping law and order. Marginalized readers easily notice the facade because they have lived or are living through the oppression. Readers in the global south vibe with Luffy's liberation because Luffy doesn't hesitate when he's up against the Marines and the world government. The people in the global south vibe with Luffy and Dragon's struggle for liberation. They vibe with Luffy and Dragon's impossible resistance against Empire. They hear the drums of liberation. But hey, One Piece isn't political. You could totally read the series and ignore Oda's construction of power, slavery, and the many genocides. Right? Part 3. Power, Slavery, and Genocide.
2 centuries ago, a former European colony decided to catch up with Europe. It succeeded so well that the United States of America became a monster, in which the taints, the sickness, and the inhumanity of Europe have grown to appalling dimensions. The West saw itself as a spiritual adventure. It is the name of the spirit in the name of the spirit of Europe, that the West has made her encroachments, that she has justified her crimes and legitimized the slavery in which she holds 4/5 of humanity. Yes, the European spirit has strange roots.
At this point, it's undeniably hard not to say that the world government is fascist. As I said in my One Piece and Liberation video, there's 3 things that brings the world government absolute dread. The true history of the world, Monkey D. Luffy, the warrior of liberation, and the Revolutionary Army, an organization created on the ruins of Ohara and desires world revolution and liberation.
見てろベガパンク、俺が世界を変えてやる。クローバーの死はオハラの意志は無駄にはしない。
These fears mirror and reflect onto our world. The American Empire fears history and truth. The truth that wherever American soldiers go, where every American bombs go, there will be massacres and inhumane levels of torture. The same can be said about Israel. Israel fears truth. They fear and have tried to eradicate Palestinians and Palestinian history. Israelis fear and detest Palestinians who dare to rise up and resist. That Palestinians still dream of liberation. On August 10th, 2025, Anas al-Sharif was murdered by Israel. There have been 270 targeted assassinations of Palestinian journalists. Israel's genocide directly mirrors the Ohara genocide. But unlike Ohara, this is real. Dr. Rafa al-Arir and Anas al-Sharif have similar last words, an entrustment to keep speaking and fighting for the liberation of Palestine. It's heavy, but people should feel the weight. Palestinians are entrusting their hopes and their dreams to us. Some people shrug this weight, but others understand that we gotta carry this weight and continue the struggle. Muhammad al-Kurd's words have also touched me deeply. I think it's easy for our hearts to go cold, to become desensitized to the daily mass murder and butchering of Palestinians. The killing is normalized. It may be 23 months, and soon it will be 2 years, but the rage I have inside of my heart will never die, not until Israel ceases to exist. To mask their war crimes, America and Israel spew out an unbelievable amount of propaganda, like the world government. There's a 100% article in the One Piece world that calls Luffy and Dragon terrorists. The world government convinced the entire world that Oharans were devils who deserve to be eradicated. Saturn calls Kuma's people natural slaves. Fishmen are dehumanized and are seen as barbaric and ideal slaves. With this propaganda comes the usage of power, of a will to conquer and subjugate others. Like in our world, resistance in the One Piece world is illegal. Defying the world government in any capacity is illegal and criminal. Studying history and learning the truth is criminal. Finding the One Piece is criminal. Oda doesn't hold back. He doesn't mince things when it comes to the cruelty of the world government, because he's holding a mirror to the American Empire. The genocide of Ohara mirrors America's shock and awe attack that instigated the 2003 invasion of Iraq. How many Iraqis burned that night? How many Iraqis were massacred and tortured for American justice? Because Iraq somehow threatened American security. Wano and Kuma's perspective of God Valley mirrors Israel's genocide in Gaza, where people are starved to death, that they think death is a release. Or Palestinians who are hunted for sport by Israelis and Americans. But One Piece isn't political. It's just a funny story about a rubber guy who wants to find the One Piece. We are on the cruise. Spoilers for Egghead. Spoilers for Egghead. It's kind of funny how the five elders are demonic. They're like the perfect representation of American leaders and Israelis. People who dehumanize others, who see them as mere insects that deserve to be wiped off the face of the earth. Any resistance, any flame, any potential threat is extinguished. How many genocides do you think these five ancient demonic beings have committed? How many great cleansings have happened? You have the Lunarians, the Buccaneers, God Valley, O'Hara, the White Town of Florence, the Kingdom of Lucinia, and whatever was there before Ennis Lobby. People might say, yeah, the five elders are an allegory for Trump, for Netanyahu, for the ruling class. People might mistakenly place the entire blame on the five elders, when in reality every obedient citizen and Marine are complicit in these genocides, and they take part in maintaining the empire. This has always been the case in our history. The Japanese people celebrated and worked their asses off so their empire could survive. When Japanese scholars like Tosaka Jun called out Japan for its fascism, no one stood up for him. Tosaka and his comrades were murdered in prison. Their words on Japanism, on Japanese fascism, were meant to be forgotten. And yet, they exist. America is also a great example. Settler colonialism couldn't have happened without regular settlers who dehumanized Native Americans. America committed a genocide. It was founded on genocide. And yeah, the American armed forces massacred Native Americans, but regular people took part in settling and stealing Native American land. The system and structure of settler colonialism is maintained by settlers. When it comes to American empire, manifest destiny got expanded. There was no more West to conquer, so America had this great idea. Why don't we go and conquer the world? Again, regular people enlisted to massacre people in Mexico, Cuba, and the Philippines. Even in the present, American citizens are profiting off empire and are bloodthirsty for more Arab and Muslim deaths. And you might say, we didn't get to vote on if we wanted to aid and fund a genocide, but your lack of action for the last 2 years has been disgusting. Stop the bombs, stop the ships, and stop the trains. Israeli settler colonialism mirrors American colonialism. Every settler living in occupied Palestine is responsible and complicit for the 77 years of genocide. I've seen some YouTubers praise the so-called anti-Netanyahu protests, or the We Are Not Our Government protests, when 82% of Israelis support genocide and the complete ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. All Israelis are the five elders in my mind. The amount of dehumanization is vile, comparing starving Palestinians seeking aid to ants. It's like Israelis are the mirror image of the demonic five elders. If you're an Israeli and a One Piece fan, either you pick up a gun and join the resistance, or you go and break the fucking siege. If you don't have the courage to do anything but stand around with a silly-ass liberal Zionist sign, then revoke your citizenship and leave. Do you hear that? I hear them. The drums of liberation. Dawn is coming. Americans, the West, and Israel may think their empires will last forever, but liberation is on the horizon. Palestine will be free, and Sudan will be free. There's been a long debate about Luffy's politics that Oda squashed with the Kuma flashback. The debate centers around the idea that Luffy isn't a politically motivated character, and he does everything on a whim. Why did he help Vivi liberate her country from Crocodile? Because he wanted her to smile. Why did Luffy order Usopp to shoot the government's flag? Because he recognized that the entire world is Robin's enemy. Why did Luffy punch a celestial dragon? To save his fishermen friends from enslavement. Why did Luffy break into Impel Down and join Whitebeard to fight the Marines? To save his brother. Why did Luffy help Rebecca liberate Dressrosa? Because she gave him food. Why did Luffy help Momo and Tama liberate Wano? Because Luffy fundamentally believes all people have a right to food. Underneath these rather simple motivations is depth. Luffy acts and gravitates towards liberation. He unhesitatingly takes action, and his nonverbal quiet moments say a lot about his political motivations. In Arabasta, the stakes increase when Luffy meets the old man in Yuba, who relentlessly searches for water. Luffy gets that people are thirsty and dying because of Crocodile. Luffy understands that the entire world is against Robin, her dream, her freedom, and her rights to simply exist. That understanding angers Luffy and motivates him to say, "Fuck it, shoot down that flag. We're going to war with the entire world, and nothing will stop us." Luffy knew nothing about slavery when he punched that celestial dragon, and yet he committed an act of treason that rivals the legend of Fisher Tiger. This punch also signifies Luffy's disgust of the celestial dragons. Kami a pet? Hachi a slave? Kuma, hearing and witnessing both acts, understood the gravity and Luffy's role in liberation. Luffy beat his own father in waging war against the world government. He was the one who saved the flame of the revolution. Through Kuma's perspective, the punch also gains gravity and significance. Kuma calls it the ultimate treason, an act no one has committed for centuries. Oda uses Kuma here to tell his readers Luffy's physical actions are political, and he is resisting and rebelling against the world government in his own way. Take Luffy's rescue of Ace. On the surface, it's really simple and may seem as non-political, but Luffy here is rebelling. He is resisting and struggling against the final judgment posed by the world government. Luffy and Whitebeard connect because they both deny Ace's existence is a crime and a sin. In their perspective, Ace is a political prisoner who has been sentenced to death over a bullshit fascist idea. Dressrosa is where depth emerges without Kuma. Luffy understood that Dressrosa is a mirror of his own country, where people are treated like garbage, hidden away, and burnt alive. Luffy fights and defeats Doflamingo, not because Rebecca gave him food, but because Luffy couldn't stand being in a birdcage. It's in his nature to resist, to fight, to seek liberation, and to overthrow the celestial dragons, to drag them from their heaven and place them in hell. Finally, you have Wano, And watching and reading Wano this time hurt, because every time I saw someone starving, I connected it to Gaza. I saw Palestinians in Gaza starving. Starvation is used by demonic people. People who want to force others into submission or mass murder them. Kato justifies the starvation and the slavery with might makes right. That the strong get to rule and the weak deserve death. This is the principal confrontation between Kaido and the warrior of liberation, Monkey D. Luffy. Wano also connects the dreams of the oppressed to the warrior of liberation. These dreams are so simple that I immediately connected them to Palestine. To eat, to sleep, to live a life with dignity, to smile, to dream, to be free of occupation, to be free from genocidal violence. Monkey D. Luffy is Fana incarnate. He is violence. The violence of the oppressed. The violence of decolonization. A violence that roars like the fire of Chandra. A violence that comes back to life with the drums of liberation. Despite Luffy being the embodiment of liberation, of violence, there are cowardly spectators sitting and watching on the sidelines. Spectators who can easily connect the dots. They can easily connect Palestine or Sudan to One Piece, but they sit there making their slop, telling their viewers that One Piece isn't political, that the conflict in Gaza isn't suitable for their platforms, that the conflict, or the war, is too complex, or they're worried about anti-Semitism, which there is. I've seen people write posts about how Jews control the world and are in control of a secret world government, which is wrong. American imperialism controls our world. If Luffy saw these spectators, he wouldn't give a shit about them. He'd probably laugh at them and call them cowards. Tell them they aren't worth profiting off his story. He'd call the videos they make boring ass slop. However, the drums of liberation are ringing throughout the world. But Luffy, the warrior of liberation, won't rise. Luffy won't save the oppressed. Even if that's the reality, you still have a choice. Do you want to be a cowardly, silent spectator, or are you like Luffy, like Dragon? Do you have the courage to stand and resist, to rebel? Anyone can be a warrior of liberation. All you need is fire and courage. Once you have them, you'll be laughing in the face of Empire, like the sun god, Nika.
National liberation, national renaissance, the restoration of nationhood to the people. Whatever may be the headings used or the new formulas introduced, decolonization is always a violent phenomenon. Decolonization is a historical process. It cannot be understood, it cannot become clear to itself, except by the movements which give it historical form and content. Decolonization, which sets out to change the order of the world, is obviously a program of complete disorder. But it cannot come as a result of magical practices, nor of a natural shock, nor of a friendly understanding.
If there's something I learned from Frantz Fanon, it's that some people have a burning fire for liberation. People who understand Fanon's words that the time for talk is over. Now is the time for action. Despite joining the FLN and fighting beside his Algerian comrades, Fanon understood the spectators, those who watch on the sidelines, those who feel apathetic, who thought the massacres and the tortures of Algerians didn't affect them. An indifference in their hearts. I don't think Oda has read Fana or George Jackson, and yet One Piece contains elements of each, waging an armed struggle, a revolutionary struggle against the fascist world government, the need for violence, as colonialism won't yield until the knife is at its throat. One Piece also reminds its viewers that repression is here. It echoes George Jackson's words, as the police will obey their masters and crush resistance with an unseen cruelty. They will imprison and enslave those who they dehumanize, but also to silence and smother resistance. In its simplest form, even when One Piece is watched for entertainment, it continuously affects its viewers. Oda continuously pesters his fans with slavery, colonization, starvation, massacring the weak and defenseless, and genocide. He is continuously trying to force his readers to look at the world around them. With these darker themes comes a reminder of violence, and Luffy and Dragon's rage. Rage that wants to spark a fire of revolution and liberation in those who watch or read One Piece. I recently watched Concerning Violence, a documentary of Fana's words in action, and what I noticed is that those who went down the decolonial and revolutionary path saw the entire world as their enemies. They understood that they were fighting against a monstrous machine of imperialism, and yet they stood and they fought for national liberation. I bet Palestinians from 1940 to the present have thought the same. Palestinians are still standing, they're still struggling, still resisting and dreaming about liberation. The resistance and the 77-year-long struggle for national liberation has given me courage to speak about Gaza and occupied Palestine. When I researched the Nakba in my masters, my heart tore. I wanted to understand why, since I was born, Israel keeps bombing and terrorizing Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. That led me to my arch-enemy, Vladimir Jabotinsky. But One Piece also motivated me when making videos talking about Palestine. I vibe with Luffy's rage. I vibe with how he doesn't hesitate when taking action. But I also love how Luffy stands for hope and brings people smiles. I want to be like Luffy. I want to make people smile. To make people feel rage and dream. I want to fight for liberation and convince you that at this moment, we all have to be out there fighting. One Piece isn't just political, it's revolutionary. Hey, welcome to the end of the video. If you enjoyed what you watched, make sure to subscribe and donate to the Samir project. When I passed 9K, I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to throw a huge party. I wanted to go on stream and be like, we're 1,000 away. But honestly, it doesn't feel right to celebrate. Thank you so much for 9K though. And inshallah, my dream of 10K will happen one day. When editing, I kept thinking how Emiratis are similar to the celestial dragons. How they're people who refuse to breathe the same air as their slaves. How if their slaves revolted, or if there was a siege, the Emiratis, like the celestial dragons, wouldn't know what to do, and they would be starved to death. But the UAE doesn't have a military force that compares to the Marines. They use foreign mercenaries to plunder Libya, Yemen, and commit genocide in Sudan. I also wanted to say that the world government can be read as any oppressive force. I personally see them mirroring American empire, but for a creator like Turb, they may appear as the UAE and the Rapid Support Forces. Oda also throws jabs against Japanese fascism. The Celestial Dragons are obsessed with Kuja sex slaves. The Kuja are a mirror for Korean and Chinese comfort women. I regret not talking about it more in depth, but the celestial dragons are obsessed with rape and showing their domination by kidnapping and enslaving women. This is also shown in the Kuma flashback, where Saturn kidnaps Ginny to test a disease on her. The scientific experiments Saturn conducts and has been conducting for how many years gives off Unit 731 vibes. I was also thinking about how harsh I came off in part 3. As an indigenous person, I don't like settlers. But when I was editing, I was reminded that there's oppression in America. The Black Panthers and Malcolm X connected their struggle for liberation to Algerians, Palestinians, and indigenous peoples. George Jackson's words echo in my mind, a knife to the throat of fascism. This video was heavy, but rereading Fana, George Jackson, Ghassan Kanafani, and Muhammad al-Kurd reminded me why I make videos. I want to affect and radicalize people, and I don't mind carrying this weight. It's a weight that should be felt. I'll catch you all next time. And don't forget, it's a free Palestine today, and a free Palestine forever. Thank you so much for watching this video. It means a lot that you watched the end of the video. That makes me really happy. Bye. The runtime was ready. I'm just kidding. This is a serious video.